Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our monthly meeting of the Cobb County Board of Zoning Appeals. At this time, I'd like to ask everybody who's able to stand as Mrs. Jeannie Payton, who serves as our senior planner for zoning, leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jeannie, and thanks for all the great work you do in the zoning office. All right, for those of you who do not have a copy of the agenda or who are attending or listening in for the first time, the first thing we will concern ourselves with are the cases on consent. These are cases that have been reviewed by the board and by the professionals from various departments in the county and to which there is no known opposition at this time. We have discussed these in our work session. Certain staff comments and stipulations have been made, and we don't anticipate any further discussion is needed for a decision. So as we go forward, the county zoning manager, division manager, Mr. John Peterson, will read each of these cases into the record, and under normal circumstances, every applicant would be here in person. And we would ask that they raise their hand as their case is called, but since we're now following COVID protocols again, the applicants with cases on consent have been asked to listen into the proceedings from their cars just outside the building. They don't need to do anything unless there's opposition here. With that said, if you are here in opposition to a case that's currently on consent, we'll ask you to identify yourself as that case is read into the record. We'll then pull that case off consent and hear it as part of our regular case agenda. We'll then vote on all the cases that are still on consent at one time. Once we've approved the cases on consent, we'll take a short break so that Mr. Peterson and his staff can follow up with the applicants as necessary, and then we'll proceed to our regular case agenda. With that, I think we're ready to address the consent cases and any other matters, Mr. Peterson. So do you have some comments to make?
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a couple of announcements to make before we start the hearing. The following two cases have been withdrawn without prejudice, and these cases will not be heard today. First case is V71, Mandy Black. This case has been withdrawn without prejudice. It will not be heard today. Second case is variance case V102, Marietta Community Church. This case has been withdrawn without prejudice. It will not be heard today. There is one case on today's agenda which has been continued by the staff, and this case will not be heard today. That's variance case V81, Crystal McDowell. This case was continued by the staff until the October 13th, 2021 Board of Zoning Appeals hearing. So V81 will not be heard today. I would like to ask the people in today's audience, if you have a cell phone, please turn the volume off on your cell phone, as when they ring, they do interfere with the broadcast and the presentations. And with that, Mr. Chairman and Board, I'm ready to start the consent agenda.
All right, let's go.
Cobb County Board of Zoning Appeals, variance hearing consent agenda for September 15th, 2021. First case on consent is variance case V103. Paul Ejua requests a variance to increase the maximum allowable impervious surface from 36.9% per previous variance case V44 of 2021 to 42.8% in land lot 90 of the first district. The property is located on the south side of Little Willier Road across from Carlos Gate Drive. Staff recommends approval subject to the following conditions. Number one, traffic comments, and number two, stormwater management comments. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case V103?
No.
Let the record show there's no one opposed. Variance case V104, Iris Anderson requests a variance to allow an accessory structure, which is a proposed pool with decking to be located to the side of the principal building and closer to the side street right-of-way line on corner lot in land lot 605 of the 17th district. The property is located on the east side of Gaylor Circle, west of Gaylor Street. Staff recommends approval. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case V104?
No.
Let the record show there's no one opposed. Variance case V105, Max Gresham requests a variance to allow an accessory structure, which is an approximately 480 square foot proposed building, to be located to the side of the principal building in land lot 952 of the 16th district. The property is located at the southern terminus of Shadow Rock Court, south of Shadow Rock Drive. Staff recommends approval, subject to the following conditions. Number one, no commercial or dwelling use of the accessory structure. Number two, sewer comments. And number three, stormwater management comments. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case of V105?
No.
Let the record show there's no one opposed. And lastly, variance case V107, Doris Crease and Kevin Reynolds request a variance to increase the maximum allowable impervious coverage from 35% to 37.5% in land lot 183 of the 16th district. The property is located on the south side of Blakedale Circle, west of Blakedale Road. Staff recommends approval, subject to stormwater management comments. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case V107?
No.
Let the record show there's no one opposed. And that completes the consent agenda, Mr. Chairman and Board.
That was quick. Thank you very much, John. All right, so it's back to this board. Any comments, questions, or concerns about any of these cases from anybody? All right, well, with that, I will entertain a motion for approval.
Motion for approval.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a second? Okay, thank you, Mr. O'Malley. So we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, I'll call for the vote. By the way, we can cast from our seats today, just so you know. Under the old protocol, we couldn't. So please go ahead and cast your votes. All right, we're going to approve the motion with all 5 in favor. So thank you very much. We will now take a 5-minute break to give Mr. Peterson time for some follow-up communication before we move to our regular case agenda. Okay, welcome back to our meeting of the Cobb County Board of Zoning Appeals. We're now ready to proceed to our regular case agenda. Our procedure here is that Mr. Peterson will read a case into the record, and the applicant and/or any representative of the applicant who wishes to speak will be asked to come forward to be sworn in by Ms. Margie Vasquez. Likewise, anyone wishing to speak in opposition will be asked to come forward and be sworn in as well. The applicant and opposition will have 10 minutes each to present their cases. All testimony will be made from the podium to my right, where we've got full AV capabilities, and testimony will be followed by questions from the board and may be directed at either party. So with that, Mr. Peterson, I think we're ready for our single regular case.
Okay, variance case V106, Sterling Development, request a variance to, number one, allow a self-service storage facility to have a flat roof rather than a gable roof. Number two, increase the maximum allowable height from 1 story or 25 feet to parapet wall to 2 stories or 25 feet to parapet wall. And number three, reduce the front setback from required 75 feet to 55 feet in land lots 1 and 2 of the 20th District. The property is located at the southwest corner of Rutledge Road and Blackacre Trail on the west side of Cobb Parkway. The applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case V106?
We got 2.
Okay. Let the record show there are 2 people here opposed to variance case V106. All those wishing to address the board, please come forward to be sworn in.
Do you not need to be sworn in?
I'll swear.
Oh. but-
No.
You don't need to be sworn in?
I'm an attorney.
So that means you don't? I didn't.
I'm automatically.
That's news to me. You're automatically
I'm officer of the court, sorry.
above the law. Okay. Thanks, Mr.
I don't
Huff.
mind being sworn in, but typically the
Okay, all right.
attorneys are not sworn. We may be sworn at, but not usually sworn.
Okay, well, I thought in your case we might make an exception, but anyway, all right, the floor is yours. You got 10 minutes, as you know.
All right. Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Parks Huff, and I represent Sterling Development in relation to this variance application. I know you're familiar with it somewhat, but I'm going to walk you through it again. This is a 3.5 acre piece. It actually has 3 different road frontages: Blackacre, Rutledge, and Cobb Parkway. The property is designated here in red. This is an aerial facing north from Cedar Crest Road going towards the property. This is Cobb County. You see the site up on the left-hand side. A couple things on the right-hand side that I want to point out is the Wellstar facility. I also want to point out the Parkatoy, which is a large parking lot just above that 3 to the right. And then further up is a Cam's Auto Body Repair Shop. Those are just some context. Also want to note, if you keep going further, you're in Bartow County. And yes, it's another county, but you can't ignore the fact that Bartow County has heavy industrial right to the Cobb County line, which is just north of our subject property. Gives you an idea of some of the uses that are in the area. I'm going to focus a little bit more on some of those in a second. This is the zoning map for the subject property. The property is zoned heavy industrial. It was zoned that way many years ago. North and south of us is zoned TS, which provides for a bunch of different uses that you would expect to see on a heavily traveled arterial highway, such as US 41. Across the street, you have general commercial, which is developed as a large greenhouse operation. And then a couple things I want to point out is to the south on the east side of Cobb Parkway or US 41, you see that LI. That is Parkatoy, which is a recreation boat vehicle parking and storage, and single-story roll-up door, old-style, non-climatized storage facility. North of that, you have an HI piece and an LI piece. That LI piece, interestingly, and of note, is developed as and used as an auto body repair shop. And so I just want to give you an idea of what the property is currently zoned for and what uses are in this area under that zoning. We are, this is the Parkatoy, and you can see the office there, that gable roof, or excuse me, non-gable roof, or gable roof, excuse me, building there. And then behind it is a single-story roll-up metal garage doors. This is the greenhouse operation across the street, and that's the auto body repair shop. This is a close-up of the subject property. Some of the things that I want to point out about it is, number one is, our direct access is Rutledge Road. We're adjacent to Rutledge Road. Your county attorney will confirm that we have an absolute constitutional right to access adjacent roadways. So one of the questions that came up last time, I expect to come up today, is, well, we don't want you accessing Rutledge Road. However, this HI piece is developed, it will be accessing Rutledge Road. My client also can confirm that he's had conversations with GDOT that they will not allow direct access to US 41, which is to the right there. And Blackacre is so narrow and so short there, it's hard to fit in a driveway and with sight distances and separation and everything. So this property, however is developed, is going to access off Rutledge Road. One of the other questions I've heard is, oh, well, we're concerned about traffic on Rutledge Road. I will stand here and sometimes I can state things, with a little hesitation, but some I can state with no hesitation. You cannot find a use that has less traffic than self-storage facility with a few boat storage lots that we have here. No other HI use is going to go there, is going to have less of an impact than that. And I do want to, I think I have also going back to this aerial, I mean, I do want to point out, I mean, if you look at Blackacre continues up, you have that TS to our north, and then north of that is Bartow County, and that's a very large auto wrecking yard where they bring in salvage vehicles and they're wrecked and they're handled there in a big gravel lot. That is just what's north on Blackacre. So it gives you context, because one of the questions I had when I first looked at it is, why is this HI sitting here? When you look at what's across the line, it makes more sense why this would have been zone HI several years ago. So this is our site plan. And what we have done is we've got an access off of Rutledge Road. We do not access off Blackacre or Cobb Parkway. We have a two-story building and a one-story building, the larger two-story building. And the combination of them is less square footage than would be allowed under HI, which allows 0.5 floor area ratio, so we're not a large building. Our height is the maximum height of self-storage facilities, which is 25 feet, but we do 2 stories. Your code has got a quirk that it allows self-storage facilities to be 25 feet tall, but requires it to be a maximum of 1 story. I've been working with self-storage facility for many years, and I hope you've had a chance to review my stipulation letter, because I go through some of the details is that there really has not been a self-storage facility approved by Cobb County in the recent history in the last 10 plus years that is not multi-story, because what everyone has gone to is the more valuable multi-story climate-controlled self-storage facility. What is not favored is a single-story roll-up door, non-climatized facility. And so that's what we have here, is something that is will be very attractive and such. And so we have had some agreements on how we would buffer Rutledge Road with some additional tree plantings. We also have some fencing that we've agreed to along our southern property, or I guess it's really the western property line and the north property line and the south property line with adjacent properties. This property is topographically challenged. It is high on Rutledge Road and then drops off, and so however this is developed is going to have to pad it out. HI properties usually are padded out pretty flat, so you have a retaining wall on the south side of the property, and then on top of that retaining wall, we would propose that black vinyl fence, privacy fence that would maintain it looking good over a long period of time and provide an actual meaningful visual barrier. But again, self-storage facility is the quietest, I said it's the least traffic, but it's also the quietest neighbor you're going to have. Very little in and out traffic, very, only, cutting grass and landscaping. That's the only thing that's really of an activity that creates any noise. So we fit in, and I think when you look at how this property transitions from the intensity on 41, the intensity north and south of us, our use as a quiet use with little traffic is a great transition to the residential, which I understand why the residential behind us has some concerns. And we've got a 50-foot undisturbed buffer in the back. This is the renderings that we've agreed to. It would be all brick, multicolored brick. I say multicolored, different shades of brick. I shouldn't say multicolored because that sounds like it's bright. But what you want to do is break it up so it doesn't look like a massive wall. So you have lighter colored brick, a darker colored brick, all using earth tones. With the windows built in it. Quite frankly, it looks very similar to a medical office building or any other type of office building. That's one of the advantages that you have with the climatized self-storage facilities, and that they can look like anything that you have. This is some of the renderings of the previous plan, and as you know, when we were before you, we were asked if there's a way we can go back to two floors and keep it at 25 feet, and that's what we've done. Do want to point out, under heavy industrial, the maximum height is 50 feet. So it's a self-storage facility that limits it to 25 feet. So if this is not built as self-storage and developed as a heavy industrial use, it actually could be much taller. And when you talk about warehousing facilities with high ceiling heights for being able to have forklifts and things like in there, you could expect a much taller building on this location. Again, my stipulation letter dated September 10th has a lot of details about what's allowed under heavy industrial, so I don't want to belabor the point, but
You got a minute.
but there is a significant amount of heavy industrial uses. Now, the neighbors are going to say, well, we like the brick building, we want to make sure it's all brick, and we want to make sure some lighting, and we're agreeable to photometric plans and making sure lighting doesn't bleed off site. We are also agreeable to some landscaping and fencing. One thing that I just want to leave on, which is we don't begin the discussion to talk about how the building looks, how we landscape it, all that, unless we're here before you asking for a variance. Because if you don't grant a variance, it will be not built by my client because he builds climatized self-storage facility, multi-stories, but it would be built by somebody else who would not be asking what kind of color brick do you want, what kind of fencing do you want, how do you want us to handle landscaping, handle those issues. So, but for the fact we're before you with a variance, these discussions wouldn't even be coming
Okay.
up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Huff. All right, we do have opposition. If you could, please state your name for the record.
Greg Lowry.
Greg
I've been
Lowry.
a resident off of Rutledge Road for 20 years.
Okay.
So my concern here is when I read the ordinance, the Code of Ordinances, Section 134,
Can I stop you for
279.
1 second? On the clock, mine was counting up. Okay, there we go. We're good. Sorry about
Yep.
that. So you got 10 minutes.
Yep, good.
Okay.
So, reading the ordinance, a two-story self-storage building requires a special use permit that has to be approved through the Board of Commissioners. Has that been done?
If you want to take your time for this, I'm going to defer that to our attorney and zoning manager. I think they have actually looked at that, but can you guys comment?
He needs to finish his.
So you want to finish? Okay, well, let's come to that then when you're done.
Okay,
Yes.
so just according to the ordinance, that's the process for a variance for a two-story self-storage. But that hasn't happened here, so that's the question is, one story is per code, 2 stories takes a permit. I just don't.
If you're ready to conclude, and we'll go ahead and let them comment. I mean, is there anything else you want to say?
I guess my request is that it's denied and it goes back through the proper process through planning and through the BOC.
Okay. Well, I think the reason we're still here today is because that question has been considered, but can I ask you guys to provide some comments? Oh, you still want to wait?
Is the gentleman done with his comments? Because we still have one more person who wants to
Are
make
you
comments.
done then, Mr. Lowry?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd just like to hear an answer to that. Yes, I'm done.
Well, so you're concluding your comments then?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, John?
Is there another person that wants to make comments
Oh,
first?
well, I don't know, yeah.
Public hearing's still open.
Okay, all right, so let's hold that question then, and then we'll hear from the rest of the opposition and come back to that. Okay, if you could please state your name for the record.
I am Teresa Stendall, 5850 Altrue Church Road. However, I'd like to read Mr. Ken Horton's letter into the record per his request. My name is Ken Horton, and I own Governor's Town Club, Inc. I purchased nearly 900 acres in 1999 to develop a very high-end golf course community along with nearly 75 acres of commercial property. This part of Cobb County that I have developed has seen tremendous growth of homes, from $750,000 to over $5 million, and some very nice high-end commercial property along Cobb Parkway. I am in favor of this part of Cobb County continuing to grow and prosper, but with the proper types of growth that will blend into the surrounding area. While I do not think this site, B106, is a good harmonious fit for the area, I would support a single-level public storage building with limited lighting along the rear of the building. Thank you for considering my input. Ken Horton, President, Governor's Town Club, Inc. Now, I have comments.
Okay, please proceed.
Again, Teresa Stendall, 5850 Autry Church Road, for the past 46 years. V106 is a new applicant, new variance is requested, a new hardship, a new site plan that has never been seen by any other Cobb County board, yet on the same parcel for which V50 was submitted and denied. The applicant would like you to believe that simply because the property is zoned HI, that there is a right attributed to that zoning category for the purpose of a self-service storage. That is not completely accurate. While it can be built on HI, it is with restrictions, as what Greg alluded to. And that has to do with Cobb County Code Section 134, 16244, and also regarding self-storage facilities, Cobb County Section 134, 279. Access, a self-service storage facility shall be located on a lot that gains access to a local, non-residential, major collector or arterial. We won't belabor the height of the building. It's simply, he's asking for 2 stories. That's one of the variance requests. The applicant has stated in recent communication that by right he can build a self-service storage facility. He is correct, but the right afforded to the applicant is if he develops this site with no variances. It's quite simple. The applicant's attorney would also like you to believe that the adjacent neighborhood and surrounding community should just take this as a known entity relative to what could go there. But that is not what this is about. Yes, 29 years ago, this parcel was rezoned to HI for the purpose of office warehouse at 34,000 square feet. This proposal is for almost 78,000 square feet. That never happened 29 years ago. And 29 years ago, this is the very first proposal for development of this site in 29 years. Nobody has come to this site to do anything. In 1992, there was no Governor's Town Club, residential or commercial. There was no Wellstar Health Park, no Cedar Crest Church, no million-dollar properties on Rutledge Drive. That section of the corridor was industrial compatible until 2014. Then significant land use changes were adopted and approved by the BOC with the Northwest Corridor Study. The facts are clear and simple. No 2-story building, no flat roof, no reduced front setback. Build it and they will come. That is the right of the applicant. The BZA is tasked with the responsibility to uphold the Cobb County Code and ordinances, the Northwest Vulnerability Study that is specific to this corridor for development and land use in spite of a spot rezoning in 1992. Giving preferential treatment to this applicant or others in the future seeking similar accommodation should not be considered. Please deny B106.
Okay. And I guess that's it for the opposition. All right, in that case, then I'm going to go back to the question that was raised by Mr. Lowry. So between Mr. Peterson and Mr. Johnson, maybe y'all can help enlighten us a little on that question.
Regarding Section 134, 279 self-service storage facilities, light industrial and heavy industrial specifically are permitted to have those in the code. The next sentence goes on to say, effective January 1st, 1998, no new applications for a special land use permit for a self-service storage facility are to be accepted by the Board of Commissioners. That goes back to a code amendment that the board adopted on December 9th, 1997, where they took out special land use permits for certain categories. They took it out of NRC, PVC, CRC, PSC, GC, and RRC. So those 6 commercial categories, the requirement for a special land use permit was deleted, and the staff was directed not to accept any more applications for self-service storage facilities in those 6 categories. In light industrial and heavy industrial, they are permitted. So anywhere else in the code where reference is a special land use permit, that's no longer needed.
Okay. Mr. Johnson, any other comments? I mean, I want to make sure that everybody is clear that we do have the authority to hear this and make a decision.
I would have to defer to the history of the code that Mr. Peterson was referencing, but I believe in this instance, under the zoning classification, what they're doing is attempting to have a use, and they're just asking for variances to develop that property.
Okay. So.
And whether or not there has been a previous SLUP, I could not address. I know the speaker had asked whether there had been a SLUP or not.
It was about process, and that's why I just want to make sure that we do have the authority as a Board of Zoning Appeals to hear the case and make a decision about the case.
The board hears cases that are, applications have been submitted and approved and given and assigned a number. So that once that takes place, then the board can
Okay.
hear that, and it's discretion of the board to determine whether there is a hardship to grant the variance.
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, since this case is in District 1, and Mr. Boulogne represents that district and is going to know more about this case, I'm going to go ahead and ask him to lead the questions and discussion at this time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me start with the applicant. Can you go ahead and tell me what the hardships are that are claimed? I see you're claiming topo as a hardship. Is
Yeah,
that
if I can
correct?
go back to my presentation. Yeah, whoa, we pulled it right up, or either that or it was the one that was up there at the, anyway. There are topographical issues with the property that are unique to it and relate to not only the topographical challenges, but also how it relates to the adjacent roadways. You can see the elevation at Rutledge is 940, and then it drops down to 924 at the bottom of the property. So we're having to chase that grade with that topographical drop, and you can see the lines there, that there's some flat areas, and then where the lines get close together, it starts dropping off. And so that's the challenge, and that's what's unique to this property is this topographical issues. And there's also the shape of the property. As you can see, it's got a sort of a triangle rather than a typical square, and so that is also one of the other issues is in that, you know, it has an influence on the location of the buildings. Does that answer your question, Mr. Boulogne?
In part. There's nothing about the topo there that stops you from putting a building on the terrain, correct?
Well, it limits the pad sites, and so it limits where and how we can put the buildings on the site. And that is one of the factors that's pushing us to the 2 stories, even though we're limiting it at 25 feet.
There was nothing different about the site conditions in 1992 when the Board of Commissioners approved of a site plan for this project, right?
I was not involved in the site plan. That was, well, first off, it was not approved to a site plan. So a site plan was not approved in 1992. It was zoned, and during the zoning process, it's my understanding a site plan was submitted, but it was not sub-zoned to that site plan.
The site plan was submitted, however, correct?
But you said that the site plan was approved by the Board of Commissioners. Just because a site plan was submitted does not mean the Board of Commissioners approved that site plan.
All right. The Board of Commissioners established conditions which were very specific to the site plan, correct? Including the 50-foot buffer in the rear?
I think the 50-foot buffer is related to the zoning condition.
That was an express condition, correct?
It's also a limitation on the zoning category of HI.
All right. And the applicant originally cited to that 50-foot buffer as the hardship. Is that correct?
It does impinge on our site, and I do want to point out another kind of quirk to this case that's related to it is the fact that the property to the west that is owned R30 is actually owned by our seller too.
The property to the west?
Yeah, that R30 portion is actually owned by our seller.
Okay. All right. If we look at your plan that you submitted, your building runs almost continuously from the front setback line, or actually over the front setback line, because you're asking for a variance there, right?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because I meant to bring it up in my presentation, but 10 minutes goes really fast. If you see the front setback, we've got a line that jogs and we've got the setback against Blackacre that's defined there, but then the setback against 41 is deeper because it's listed as a different category road. But we are further from 41. You can see there's 100 feet of right-of-way between our property line and the actual roadway of 41.
While we're there, what's the topo, what's the elevation on Cobb Parkway at that point?
The middle of Cobb Parkway at the intersection is roughly 921.
Okay, and the building would be built on a pad at what elevation?
The elevation, the estimated FFE finished floor elevation is 931.
So the building's already going to sit 10 feet above the road level? Is that right?
If you're looking at it from 41, but from Rutledge, which I think is the more important consideration, is we are dropping it 10 feet from Rutledge. So actually Rutledge, which has got the residential on it, as you go in further down Rutledge, we're actually set down low, and I think that's another factor that is in our favor, is that, we're recessing down against the residential, really, and in context, 25 feet, a typical two-story home exceeds 25 feet.
Yeah. But from a visual perspective, isn't it not true that many self-storage facilities that have been approved by the Board of Commissioners in Cobb County sit below street level, at least at the base elevation?
At the base elevation, that is sometimes the case and sometimes not the case. But then a two-story is actually sort of unique. The ones I'm familiar with are usually 3 and 4 stories, with one floor being below grade and then the 2 or 3 above.
But despite your complaints about topo as being a hardship, there is nothing about the topo that prevents you from putting a building all the way from the front of the property all the way to the rear of the property.
25 feet in height, yes.
Irrespective of the height, the point is you're going to have a foundation throughout there. This isn't a situation where there's a creek or where there's a...
There is no creek. I said that the two hardships is the topography and the shape.
Yeah, but the topography, alleged hardship, has absolutely nothing to do with your ability to put a pad on here and put a building on it in terms of the distance from the front to the back of the property.
We could have more usable land if we didn't have the grades and we didn't have the odd shape, which would allow us to maybe potentially spread it out. I understand you don't like my hardship.
No,
and
no,
you can
that's
keep
not,
asking the question. But,
no,
but,
it seems like you don't like my question, Counsel. My question is from the front to the back of the property, from Blackacre Trail and North Cobb Parkway at one side to the 50-foot buffer that the Board of Commissioners required to the rear, you're using every inch you have and then some. You just want more. You just want to take more and asking for these setbacks, correct? And asking for these variances as to the frontage. I mean, the point is you got a building on every inch of that going back except for the parking pad where you intend to have exterior storage, correct?
We don't have a building on every square inch of it. We've actually got 2 buildings. We've got drive aisles between the 2 buildings. That's the area that's taken up by something other than buildings. We've got significant setbacks from Cobb Parkway and Blackacre. We got we have to move it off of Rutledge. I mean, that building is actually moved further from Rutledge. You can see the building setback line, which is that dashed line that's approximately, that if we respected the setback line along Rutledge, we could move that building 30 feet closer to Rutledge. But one of the reasons why we can't move that building 30 feet closer to Rutledge is because there's the grade drop from Rutledge. And quite frankly, I think it's a benefit to the folks on Rutledge that we be moved further from Rutledge and that we use that distance to pick up the grade from the height of Rutledge to the finished floor elevation we're going to be bringing down to 931. I mean, the other development option would be to fill our site up to 940 so we're on grade with Rutledge.
So you're agreeing with me that even though you could possibly theoretically, but for topo, build closer to Rutledge, you're using every inch in the direction from Cobb Parkway to the rear 50-foot buffer that you could possibly build on. You're using every inch of that. There's no interference with the topo from using every inch of that. You don't understand my question because you haven't answered it despite my asking it about 4 times.
Well, I think I've answered your question.
It's a
You
continuous
don't
building.
like my answer. My answer is that building could be 30-plus feet closer to Rutledge Road,
Right,
but
but-
for the grade drop that we're using and needing to pick up for grade-wise, but that also the advantage is that it puts our building below the grade of Rutledge, which has the bigger concern for visual impact. I don't think people driving along Cobb Parkway, especially as you've driven through all the industrial up in Bartow County, care about the visual impact along of something that will look like an office building.
Yeah. You talked about everything else except the answer to my question, which remains the same. There's a 200-foot continuous building going from the front building line back to almost the 50-foot buffer, and the only thing between that and the 50-foot buffer is a drive area and a number of exterior parking spaces where you propose to park boats and such, correct?
Again, I mean, the site plan speaks for itself. There's quite
Yes.
a bit of extra land. We could put a bigger building on the site.
I'll take that as the fact you don't have any arguments to the fact that there's nothing about the topo that limits you in terms of the orientation of this building relative to Cobb Parkway and relative to the 50-foot buffer to the rear as mandated by the Cobb Board of Commissioners in 1992. Let me move on a little bit. Do you think boat traffic usage is higher than self-storage usage in terms of traffic?
Okay, keep in mind, again, I know the opposition said that the current zoning of HI is irrelevant, but we aren't asking anything to do with boat storage. We do have boat storage on our site plan. It's our courtesy to show that on the site plan. But in fact, that's by right under HI with the self-storage facility. We could do boat parking. So, that it's very limited. I mean, I showed you the picture of Parkatoy, which is slap full of boats and RVs. We've got very limited parking for boats and RVs. Given the proximity to the lake, given the proximity to $700 million+ homes that have boats, that they want to have their boats close by to pick them up and go to the lake, this is a need. And that's one of the reasons why you don't see a bunch of people here, because they recognize this is a need in this area. And I can tell you also from personal experience, I drive by Parkatoy pretty much during the summer every weekend because I have a boat. I go this direction to go up to Lake Ackworth. And I can state pretty confidently that I don't think I've ever seen anyone pulling out of Parkatoy, even though there's hundreds of boats and RVs. So the traffic created by storage of boats and RVs is a lot less than one would think, because if you've ever owned a boat, you know that the best day of your life is when you buy it. The next one is when you sell it, because you never use it as much as you think you will.
Okay. With that understanding, do you have any understanding as to the relative usage of a boat storage and the traffic generated as a result relative to what would be typical in self-storage?
I don't know the differentiation. I do know that both of them are minimal, and both of them are less than any other potential HI use of this property.
Can you tell me where fencing is on this plan?
Yeah, you can see here, we've got the red dots are the additional buffer plantings that would go along Rutledge Road south of our, I guess actually west of our driveway. And then that dark black line that picks up from there that wraps around the back of it would be the fencing. And you can see the fencing detail on the right-hand side. So it's a solid privacy fence. But I do note, I mean, yeah, that fence is buffering a 50-foot buffer, and then my client, or the seller of our property, current owner of the property, actually owns on the other side of that. So I don't know who we're buffering. And then when you go on the other side, you've got a retaining wall, and then on top of that retaining wall, you'd have this fence, so that it would create quite a visual barrier on that side. And then we transition back to tree plantings along that southern property line adjacent to that TS property.
So is the fence where the orange is shown here?
No, the orange is extra landscaping, trees and such.
I think the orange,
I'm going to tag in an
He can speak if
expert.
he likes, that's fine. Yeah.
I need you to state your name for the record if you would.
Yep, Clint Patterson, Sterling Development, 3900 Edison Lakes Parkway, Mishawaka, Indiana. So Parks was on the right track, but the orange solid line, as you'll see in the detail to the right, is the decorative aluminum fencing, which is what you would see from Cobb Parkway, as it's supposed to be a dressy, classier look and give a more stately look to that area. The dotted areas are the extra landscaping that we are agreeable to, as we spoke the last time we were here. The solid black around the back is the vinyl solid. If there's concern with that, again, if folks want to see something else along the frontage where that orange is, we're happy to talk about that if we get to that point. Just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
So to be clear, it's two different kinds of fencing, one
Yeah.
one where the orange is and one where the black is.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
the orange is.
And I'm sorry, when you said orange, I'm not real good with colors. I was thinking you were talking about the red dots, but the orange line is a decorative fence, which is that top fence on the right-hand side.
That's all right. Those are all the questions I have for the applicant, but I welcome anyone else to ask questions of the applicant at this time, and then I'll have more questions.
Just very quickly, you talked briefly about lighting, and I think that's been a concern that's been raised. Can you just talk a little bit more about maybe what your thoughts or plans are with respect to lighting?
We would agree to, on the back and rear, we need security lighting. And so we would have some security lighting that would be cascading on the building. And then parking lot lighting, could use lower height poles for that. And we would be glad to do a photometric plan to show that we get to zero, within 50 feet of the end of the subject property, foot candles, going towards the residential properties.
Okay. That was it. Fred, did you have another question?
Not for the applicant.
Okay, all right.
I do have one for.
Anybody else have questions before? Okay.
Go ahead, please.
Just a point of clarification, we talk about the topo a lot. So if you know, and you've referenced it, but I would like to revisit, from Rutledge Road, because of topo, you're saying how much of the building actually shows once you get past the fencing and the trees and everything? What?
Yes, I'd be glad to. So a couple of things, if you give me a second here. The top of, at our property line at Rutledge, where you'd enter our property is 942. What we're talking about is establishing an elevation of finished floor elevation of 931.
Yeah,
Or let me make sure I've got that number correct.
Let me just add a little bit to that. So from just past our entry, which would line up almost identical with the neighboring properties on Rutledge, you are between 947 and 950 along Rutledge Road in that area. Yes, up closer to Black Acre, you start moving down, obviously, because you're moving towards Cobb Parkway. But past where the residential is actually at, you are between 947 and 950. Our building would sit anywhere between 10 and 15 foot below that, and then you're a 25-foot building, so you're seeing it as we spoke the last time. If it was a 3-story, you're seeing 2, and so that I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay.
And then I also wanted to, and I think your question relates to, if you look at the drive aisle, that is from the building, that is 20 feet and then another 10 feet roughly. So that building, but for that grade drop and picking up the grade, because there's 2 ways you can do it. You could either transition down or you can fill. If we filled up to that at Rutledge, we could move that building forward. But we've moved the building back, and it's probably about 30-something feet further from the setback line on Rutledge, so that we can handle that grade with our driveway, but also so that it sits about 10 feet below the grade of Rutledge.
Okay, all right. That answers my question, thank you.
I think that's it. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Huff.
Could I get Teresa Stendahl back up? Hey, you covered a lot of ground in your discussion. One of the things you talked about was a denial of a V50. Can you give us the year and some
I believe,
background?
if I'm not mistaken, and this was 3 o'clock this morning, but was not the previous applicant's variance request denied? Wasn't that V50? Maybe I have it confused with another variance in my neighborhood.
I believe that's correct. I think it's
Right. That's what I was referring to.
Who is that?
I think Park said that.
I was
Oh.
talking about the opposition.
You're talking about earlier this year?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fine. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure we're not talking about another case that we needed to
Right,
somehow
because
reference.
this was denied, V50 was denied, and then it was refiled, and it became V106, but the hardships, the variances, everything changed. Applicant, the whole 9 yards.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I had of that witness. Does anyone else have questions? Any other member of the board have a question for that witness?
No, I do not.
Okay. In that case, let me go to Amy Diaz.
Amy Diaz, DOT.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you tell me what the elevation is from this plan at Rutledge relative to the base pad here of the main building?
My copy of this plan in the book doesn't give me the topo, so if maybe they can turn on the topo for the GIS. Oh, that's fine, yeah. If you can zoom into the intersection so I can see what line that is. You want the topo, you want the elevation at Rutledge at 41?
No, where the entrance is approximately. It looks like it's somewhere near that 941, but I'll let you be the judge of that.
All right. So 29. As best I can approximate without scaling it off, it looks like it is 937 at the
937? So 937 at Rutledge?
at the Rutledge at the driveway for the development.
So Rutledge at driveway is 937, and the base elevation of the building was stated to be 931? Is that correct? I mean, that's what I heard from the applicant.
Oh, got it, okay. Where's the building elevation? since you're up here.
Yeah, it's turned the other way. The aerial, that's what's confusing.
Got it.
So this is,
Okay, so I've been corrected on where it is. It's around 942. And then the elevation of the base of the building, I can, again, estimate where it is on this map, but they may be grading or moving the building, so that's probably a question for the applicant as far as
Okay.
what the base elevation would be.
That's fine. Other than dealing with the fact that you can't have a road go downhill to 45-degree angle, are there other factors that go into the determination of how close or how far a self-storage should be off the access road?
So the one thing that we have is we do recommend a certain uninterrupted distance from the roadway. It's a minimum of 50 feet. And then if they're intending for it to be used by like tractor trailers, which isn't in this case, but RVs and things that are longer, if they expect the vehicle to be longer than 50 feet, then we would look at 75. And that's in our comments that we recommend at least the 50 feet.
At least 50 feet and possibly 75. Okay. So, and in this case, how far off of Rutledge Road is the nearest portion of the building?
Around 120. The issue for where the current site plan and why we made that comment is it isn't the building that they're running into, but their parking area that's in front of the building. So we need that turnoff to a parking area to be further back.
How far does that turnoff need to be?
Same distance. Basically, uninterrupted means no parking spaces, no drive aisles, anything like that.
So they would have to, under any circumstances, have a parking area of 50 to 75 feet back off of Rutledge, correct?
That would be our recommendation.
Okay. And in this case, how far is that turn area back off of Rutledge under this drawing?
Under this drawing, the straight line distance is around 20 feet, I believe.
So you think they're still too close?
Correct. They can apply for a variance with it. That is something that we can look at, but that is the development standard, is the 50 feet.
But they haven't applied for a variance today, have they?
Other than having the site plan submitted, no.
Are there implied variances here?
If you approve to the site plan and then do not have my comments overrule the site plan, then it would be approved at this distance.
And where are your comments?
My comments are part of the case. So when you do staff comments and recommendations, if you do not otherwise in conflict, the site plan would overrule. If it's to staff comments and recommendations, the comments overrule, the staff comments overrule.
Very good. Does anyone else have any questions of our representative from the Department of Transportation? All right. Thank you. Is there anyone else that wants to hear from any other witnesses at all? Because I don't.
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. So I want to begin by apologizing to the applicant, and here's the reason why. I heard from the community on this matter when it first came up, May, June, whenever. I read letters and heard testimony here complaining about three-story. And it was my thought and understanding at the time, a complete misread of the community out there, or certain members of the community. I don't want to suggest they speak for every member of the community, but they certainly speak for several, including Governor's Town Club, that there was not this form of hostility towards a two-story self-storage of a certain size being out there. I think I did indicate quite clearly I did not want boat storage out there. The reason why is the traffic on Blackacre and Rutledge backing up, and that just augmenting that, particularly on Friday afternoons and Sundays and Saturdays in the summer. That was my concern there, and basically Blackacre as it comes in here to the intersection with Third Army and 41 is almost always backed up during rush hours, beginning of the day, end of the day. Traffic stacked on Blackacre, so people hauling boats would have to haul in and out of Rutledge, and I would see that as an increased concern for some scrapes right there. So that was one concern I articulated at the time. Turns out, obviously, that I misread the community. Several members of the community misunderstood. They've come forward here today and articulated their concern. I have studied these things, these self-storage facilities in conjunction with another application that's pending before the Planning Commission right now, which I think is the right place for these things to go, is before the Planning Commission for a lot of reasons, and I'm about to get into that. And I hate to harp on code, but the first part of the code, 134-279, says self-storage facilities shall be permitted within these LI, light industrial, and HI, heavy industrial classifications, effective January 1, 1998. No new applications for a special land use for self-storage facilities are to be accepted by the Board of Commissioners. So what I understand that to pertain to is that they're not supposed to put them by special application, special permit outside of LI and heavy industrial classifications. In support of that, I have to read that in conjunction with other code. And the rest of the code, also in 279, has a number of specifications making it clear that the Board of Commissioners are the ones to make the decisions on a number of issues facing us here today. Among them, open storage, subpart 9, open storage of recreational vehicles and dry storage of pleasure boats of the type customarily maintained by private individuals for their personal use shall be permitted within a self-storage facility provided the following conditions are met. A, such storage shall take place only within a designated area. The area so designated shall be delineated upon the site plan submitted for approval by the Board of Commissioners when applying for a special land use permit. So when I try to give effect to both parts of the code, which happily I didn't write, the only way I can give that effect is you're not supposed to circumvent the placement of these type of facilities only in HI and LI areas by special land use permit, but you're still supposed to come into the Board of Commissioners with a site plan and a special land use permit for the Board of Commissioners to approve of the recreational storage area for outside vehicles. That would be one of the provisions I point to. Second, well, not second, I've made more than 2 points, I hope. Within the exception of the structure, and this is where I'm reading here, is still within 279, subpart D3, maximum building height, with the exception of the structure used for security quarters, the maximum height of a self-storage facility shall be 1 story, unless additional stories are approved by the Board of Commissioners upon issuance of a special land use permit. And then all self-storage facilities shall utilize gable roofs with not less than a 2 and 12 slope. So again, it appears quite clear under the code that this is a decision to be made by the Board of Commissioners, not by this group. So those are my points under the code. And let me just go to the facts of the case as I understand them. The distance from Cobb Parkway to the 50-foot buffer in the rear, which was a condition imposed in 1992 by the Board of Commissioners on the rezoning to HI. There is no limitation other than setbacks on the amount of use that can be made there that's imposed by the topo. They're maxing that out from Cobb Parkway to the rear. Along Rutledge, which it was argued the topo from Rutledge to the building is a reason why there's a special condition, a unique circumstance, which at first I don't believe is unique at all. But assuming for the sake of discussion it was unique, it is not in any way the reason why they can't put a building closer to Rutledge. The reason why they can't put a building closer to Rutledge is because they need to maintain a fence and a landscaping barrier there. Then they need to have an area to drive to the rear of the property. And you heard from staff, if we follow Cobb DOT comments, they can't even put the building as close as they show it on the plan. So if we follow our own Cobb DOT staff, they can't even do what they're asking for, and the supposed ground for a variance is a false representation to this body. And having sat in this board for 2 years and 9 months now, what we typically do is deal with situations where a builder's built a subdivision and we've been asked to approve of a pool or an accessory structure, and the fellow just can't, or the lady just can't build her she shed or whatever because there's just not enough land there to build it, or because there's a swale, or because there's a drainage ditch, and we let them do it. That's a good bit different from making decisions of this character and nature, which I think should only be made by the Board of Commissioners, and I think the code greatly supports that. If the vehicle, if we took the interpretation that there aren't to be any more special land use permits going to the Board of Commissioners, notwithstanding all this language saying there still should be, that's still in the code as to allowing these specific variances, I apologize. I'm going to put that where I can make sure nobody can hear it. But if the vehicle for getting that before the Board of Commissioners is not to be a special land use permit, then I believe it should be an other business item. In support of that, I point to section 13494A of the code, where it states no variance may be granted for a use of land or building or structure that is prohibited by this chapter, and no variance may be granted which would conflict or alter a stipulation imposed by the Board of Commissioners, except, and let me be fair, except for certain setback variances. That code section is subpart 3 of 13494. In that code section, there is actually a provision under certain circumstances which don't specifically apply here for us to make a recommendation and have it forwarded to the Board of Commissioners. I have conferred with counsel both Monday in front of all of you and today before the meeting, and he now thinks that because of the limited grounds provided in that code section should not be the way that we go here. That specifically relates to, I believe, lot sizes and road frontage were the two conditions laid out under that code section. So I will follow his guidance and not recommend us making a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. But based on this, I think to the extent this applicant wishes to proceed with this particular plan or to try to, I think the correct course is for this to go to the Board of Commissioners either as a special land use permit request or as a request for a special land use permit. To allow these specific variances, not to allow self-storage as an exception to to some other zoning category because it's the right zoning category, but rather to allow the specific variances sought, since that language is still in the code. As to the variance request for the type of roof that goes on this, that doesn't, there's nothing in the hardship that relates in any way to the request. The type of roof that goes on the structure has absolutely nothing to do with the topo of the property. So just to try to quickly summarize, again, I think in order to avoid setting very dangerous precedent here and circumventing the board, in order to avoid in the future other applicants feeling like they can circumvent the Board of Commissioners by coming here with something that seems to me to be a Board of Commissioners issue, I believe that what we should do is to deny this request for a variance and suggest that to the extent the applicant wishes to pursue the structure, that he do so through, or it do so through a application of some kind to the Board of Commissioners.
All right, thank you.
So that would be my motion, that it would be denied for all those reasons.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Beloin. We do have a motion. Is there a second? And we do have a second, so I will go ahead and call for a vote. And it looks like the vote will pass. So the motion to deny is approved by a vote of 3-2 with Ms. Russell and Mr. McDaniel dissenting. So that concludes the regular case agenda. First off, just thanks everybody for your time this afternoon. We now need to handle a couple of housekeeping items, specifically approving of the minutes from our last BZA hearing and our last work session. Has everybody had a chance to look them over? Is there a motion to approve? All right, we've got a motion. We've got a second. Great. If you could, go ahead and cast your vote. We're needing your vote.
No, I got it.
Nope, not a problem.
I got it.
All right, so we've got motion to approve, 5-0. Thank you very much. And lastly, we're now ready to adjourn, but we need a motion to do so. So got to get a motion to adjourn, please. Got a motion? And we've got a second, and could you please cast a vote for adjournment? And unanimous vote to adjourn. Thank you all very much. See you next month.